AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Brett Johnson with you here on The Matt McNeil Show. And if you're a longtime listener of The Matt McNeil Show, you know that we love highlighting the arts and entertainment around the Twin Cities because the Twin Cities are just an awesome area when it comes to finding a great show in town, whether it's a musical performance, a play, or anything like that. And one of the plays we're going to be highlighting today comes to us from the Children's Theater in Minneapolis as they're putting on a children's show titled Frog and Toad, as this is based off the children's book that was written a number of years ago. Basically, children's author and illustrator Arnold Lobel's beloved characters hop from the page to the stage in this Tony-nominated musical A Year with Frog and Toad, based on the popular children's book that follows two best friends, the cheerful, popular frog and grumpy but lovable Toad, through fun, four-filled seasons. And joining us now on the show is Reed Sigmund, one of the stars of the show who plays Toad in A Year with Frog and Toad. Reed, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. So I love this dynamic that we have in the show as we follow these characters through four seasons, as we have, of course, Frog, who's the more cheerful kind of guy, the more outgoing, kind of friendly guy, versus Toad, who's a little more grumpy, maybe a little more reserved, but someone who's very lovable as well. And I think people can really relate to even both of these characters. I would probably be a little bit more on your end with Toad, Toad at least on my end, but I'm curious, how do you approach bringing a character like Toad to life on the stage? Because this is a beloved children's story, and I'm curious what kind of approach you take to bring him to life.
Absolutely. Well, you go back and you read the source material. That's where I always start, and just kind of find the enjoyment of it. Don't think of it as work or research. Just find the enjoyment in it, and as you're finding that enjoyment, finding what connects you to these characters, what you see in of yourself in these characters. And then I was lucky enough to get to see the original Broadway production when it was here having its preview run, its origins here in Minneapolis. So I got to see Marklin Baker, who originated the role, and I got to see what he brought to it. So I was able to see it in literary form, or read it in literary form, and then also see it actually personified and inhabited in a human body. I'm not Marklin Baker. I look nothing like him. We have completely different body types, completely different voices. So I can't do an impression of him, and I would never want to do that anyway. But I did watch it and go, okay, so I'm really connecting with this character on stage too. And what am I connecting with? And that was the question that I had to keep asking myself. What draws me to this character? And I can honestly say that it's his anxiety. Toad is an anxious creature. And I grew up a pretty anxious kid, and I still deal with anxiety myself. I have two sons who deal with anxiety. So anxiety is something I see pretty frequently in my life. And I think there are a lot of young people out there and older people who have also dealt with anxiety, either personally or with a loved one. And while it is a quality that certainly requires some degree of maintenance, it also is very charming and very lovable in a lot of ways. And that's who Toad is.
I'm curious about that, too, because this is a show, and by the way, this does start running April 23rd and will play through June 16th over at Children's Theater. Make sure you go to childrenstheater.org for tickets coming up. But I'm curious about the fact that anxiety is something that we can get, obviously, at all ages. But how do you tailor that to a younger audience and try to send that message to kids of how you can deal and kind of manage your anxiety to very young audiences, because that can be a challenge as compared to adults?
Absolutely. And, the moments of anxiety that Toad has in this play are just moments such as his clock is broken, and he realizes that he needs to be able to tell the time to take his cookies out of the oven because they're only supposed to be in there 7 to 8 minutes. And instead of just going, okay, well, how can I cope with this? It starts to spiral. And it's like, I don't know what to do. My clock is broken. I don't know what to do. I don't know when to take them out. And somebody, Frog in this situation, saying, or Mouse, saying, why don't we just wait and check and see when the cookies are golden brown and everything will be okay? And it's kind of that calming influence that Toad finds in his friends, which helps him get through his daily tasks. There's also one of the big anxieties that I had as a young person that I see represented on stage here is Frog is late for their Christmas get together. And instead of Toad just going, oh, he's late, immediately Toad's mind jumps to something terrible must have happened to him. He's lost, or he's trapped in the bottom of a hole, or he's being chased by a wolf. And as a kid, whenever my parents were late, or whoever was supposed to pick me up from football practice or piano lessons when they were late, my brain always immediately went to the worst. So I do believe that a lot of kids, a lot of young people actually have kind of similar mentalities and similar challenges in their life. And I think it's always nice to see yourself represented on stage, and to see the way you think or the way you feel represented on stage. So I think young people are really going to be able to connect with the character of Toad.
We're speaking with Reed Sigmund, who plays Toad in the new play coming out to the Children's Theater called A Year with Frog and Toad. Again, get tickets over at childrenstheater.org, childrenstheater.org, A Year with Frog and Toad. Let's talk a little bit about how you interact with your co-star in the show. That's Jay Getty, because obviously he plays Frog, you play Toad, and that chemistry is central to the story. You really have to be able to develop that chemistry between these two best friends. So I'm curious about how you go about doing that.
I first met Jay 22 years ago, and I was understudying for his scene partner, his co-star, the guy playing Toad at the time. And we performed on stage twice together, and pretty instantly clicked. It's really about connection. And anytime you look at Jay, either off stage or on stage, he'll give you this beautiful eye contact that just lets you know that he's listening and he's there for you. And when somebody gives you that, and gives you that connection, chemistry just starts to naturally happen. Jay and I are very different humans off stage, just as our characters are very different characters on stage. He is he's so dignified. He has this beautiful elegance about him. He's tall, dashing, golden age of Hollywood, chiseled good looks with his beautiful voice, and kind of a calming presence. And I'm the exact opposite. He's like a foot taller than me. I'm like 50 pounds heavier than him. I'm a little sloppy. I talk a little clumsily. But that's what these characters are like. And whether it's on stage or off, I think Jay and I, just like Frog and Toad, do a good job of celebrating those differences within each other and admiring those differences within each other, instead of looking at as those as an excuse to not get along or to reject somebody's friendship. It's like, well, they're very different, but there's something about that I really love, and it helps me see the world in a different way. And I'm going to embrace that. So that's what Jay and I do on and off stage.
Obviously, the show is tailored towards a younger audience, but so often when we have shows, whether it's a streaming show, TV show, book, plays, or whatever else, it can be entertaining a lot for the parents as well who are taking the kids to the show. So I'm curious kind of how this might appeal to some of the parents that might be taking their kids to the show, because I'm sure they very much enjoy watching this too.
Absolutely. This show is wildly unique in a lot of different ways. One of the ways it's unique is that it's different from traditional children's literature. Similar to, the Grinch, where you have this menacing figure who lives on a mountain and people are scared of him, or the Wizard of Oz, where there's a wicked witch that everybody is scared of. Or, so many Disney stories, which young people watch, where there's this classic villain. That doesn't exist in this story. This story is kind of the adventures that we all, meet, greet, and experience every single day. The small little moments in life, whether it's baking cookies or raking leaves or flying kites, which somehow can seem really inconsequential as the days go by. But if you really pause and look at them, you kind of find the beauty in those smaller moments. And that's what this show really celebrates. And I think parents, while watching this show, will definitely see themselves. But I think, we're not playing kids as Frog and Frog and Toad are not children. But you see a lot of their behaviors, and a lot of, especially what Toad goes through, they will recognize those behaviors in their own kids. And I think some of those anxieties will ring very, very true, and help those adults have a good time, and actually also learn how to help them cope and manage their young ones' anxieties the way that Frog does.
So I'm curious what kind of challenges you've had in terms of playing the role of you, or maybe any memorable moments you've had thus far, at least preparing for it.
Yeah, challenges. Anytime you remount a show, there are blessings and challenges. This is my third full production in the role. And what's great about revisiting a role is it kind of lives in your bones already, and for the most part the blocking, you definitely have the lines memorized and you have the lyrics memorized and the notes memorized, um, but it comes with this added challenge of you don't have the benefit of it naturally being fresh to you. And our job as actors on stage is to make everything feel fresh. It needs to feel alive. That's the beauty of live theater, is the performances are alive. They are present. They are immediate. So there is a challenge to be like, okay, well, I've done this 200 times, but how do I make it feel like it's my first time? And during the creative process, it's just really important not to rest on your laurels or lean back and go, yeah, I got this. It's looking at it and saying, this is an opportunity to discover things that I did not discover last time. And there needs to be that quest, that hunger to explore, to find new things, to find new moments, to find more nuance, new details, to deepen the performance. A lot of times as actors, we think, a performance should grow, but that does not mean grow up. It should not get bigger. It should not get more loud or obnoxious. It should grow down. It should, like roots, it should become deeper. It should become more connected. It should become more real. So that's what I'm always trying to do. That's a challenge, but one that I actually love exploring.
And final question as we go back to the story here of a year with Frog and Toad. I love the fact that the story starts in the spring and then it circles all the way back around. I think that kind of, I don't know, stealing the term circle of life, but I love that concept because it seems very calming that at the end of the play, we're kind of back to where we started.
Mm-hmm.
They went through all of these challenges, both Frog and Toad, and they were able to grow from it. And I think that's a really kind of satisfying way to kind of close the show and all their adventures that they experienced throughout the whole entire time.
It really is. There's a line at the end of the show that I love. It's you have these set of birds, which are kind of narrators. They come in at the beginning singing, and then they take us out of the show singing. And one of the birds steps forward and he says, over the years, some things change, and that's good. And some things don't change, and that's good too. One thing that is for sure, Frog and Toad will always be good friends. And there is kind of a journey where it's like, yeah, over the year, things are going to change. I look at my life from last April to this year, it's wildly different. And a lot of that change is really good. And there's a lot of things that haven't changed, and those are good too. So it really does celebrate, the years, but in a way that is we can all recognize. And I truly believe when people walk out of the show, they will feel more appreciative and satisfied with their lives, with the day-to-day adventures that they have, which sometimes they don't stop to notice. But I think the show really put a spotlight on those little moments for them.
Absolutely. That whole idea, some change is good and you have to experience it. And the fact that Frog and Toad will always be friends at the end, it's a very simple message, but I think it really does resonate with audiences of all ages. So I absolutely love that type of ending. We have been speaking with Reed Sigmund, who plays Toad in A Year with Frog and Toad, which again you can see over at Children's Theater. We'll be playing until the middle of June. That's June 16th to be exact. Make sure you get tickets, childrenstheater.org, childrenstheater.org. Highly recommend it. Sounds like a great show. Make sure you go check it out. Reed, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. You take care.
All right, let's take a break, and then we'll send things back over to Matt McNeil on The Matt McNeil Show.